A few weeks ago, I completed the biggest deal of my life, my first perfect BRRRR. And in this video, I shared every detail of that deal and how it put a $64,000 check in my pocket. And people had a lot of thoughts. So in today's video, I'm reading your questions, your questionable comments, and your accusations. And of course, giving you the answers you've got to know. Today's video is for the haters. Alright, I was just messing around. This video is actually not for the haters. There's actually two types of people who could be watching this video right now. And those two types are best defined by one of my favorite quotes called "The Man in the Arena" by Teddy Roosevelt. While it's kind of a long quote, I promise it's worth the read because it talks about two types of people. The critic, who finds and points out all types of mistakes and is always suspicious of anything good. And then there's the actual person in the arena. The person actually doing the thing. They're failing, trying, learning, and as Teddy Roosevelt puts it, daring greatly. So while I will be responding to some of their comments, this video actually isn't for the haters or the critics because it's not the critic who counts. This video is for those of you who actually want to get started on your journey and are looking for help. You guys are the ones that count. You're actually wanting to get into the arena, or maybe you're already in the arena and you're trying to learn and fail and learn and continue to grow. And you might be reading these comments and accusations and wondering what my response is and how true they are. So that's who this video is for. For those of you who are actually gonna take this information, get out there and try to use it, not the people who just wanna hate from behind the keyboard. If it sounds like this video is for you, don't forget to change the color of the like button. Let's get started. First off, there were a ton of super positive comments and I truly appreciate you guys because reading those comments does help me continue to be motivated knowing that these videos are helping so many people. So thanks to everybody who left a really nice comment. Also, as the channel grows, there are more and more scammers pretending to be me in the comments, so be careful. I'll never give you a phone number to text and I'll never tell you to hit me up on WhatsApp. So always double check that the comment's actually coming from me because a lot of these scammers will steal my profile picture, but they will copy my name in a kind of weird way. So always look for that. All right, let's dive in first with a quick refresher of all of the numbers on this deal for those of you that saw that video. And if you didn't see it, here's just a quick brief overview. On this deal, I used the BRRRR strategy, which stands for buy, rent, refinance. Wait, no, that's not what it stands for. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. To put it plainly, I used a private money loan, which I'll talk about more later, to purchase this property for $90,000. And the property was not in great shape. So I then took a portion of money that I've made wholesaling over the last year to put $64,000 into this renovation. That includes all of the renovation, my taxes, my insurance, and paying the interest on that private money loan. Adding those numbers together means that I'm all into this deal for $154,000. Remember that number, $154,000 is what I put into this deal. Once the renovation was complete, it was time to do the refinance. So I got an appraisal from the bank that said this property was worth $205,000. Now, because it's worth $205,000, my bank will give me 80% of that appraised value as a cash out loan at closing. So here's where things get really interesting. 80% of $205,000 is $164,000. Do you remember that number I told you earlier? What I'm all into my deal for? $154,000. So out of that $164,000 cash out refinance, I can pay back the $90,000 private money loan as well as myself for all of the renovation costs, all of the associated holding costs and interest payments. So I paid everything back and still had $10,000 that I could basically put in my pocket in the form of the cash out refinance. Now, for the first question that I want to answer for you guys, there's a very common question in the comments is, where does that $164,000 go? Why would they give me that money? How did they get it back? Well, that $164,000 cash out refinance becomes now my monthly mortgage payment that needs to get paid back over the course of 30 years. So that cash out refinance is now my mortgage and I owe about $1,000 per month over the next 30 years to pay back that loan. But this property makes about $2,000 per month in rental income, which means I have about $1,000 a month in cash flow before I set aside about $200 a month just to account for future repairs, vacancy, etc. So all in all, I'm looking at about $800 a month in pure cash flow. But if you listen to this next commenter, everything I just said is a lie. Wrong. You can take 80% cash out on a primary home, not an investment property, which require 25% down, also known as 75% LTV available for refinancing. Let's start there. First, wrong. How rude. Who raised you? Second, they say that you can take 80% out on a primary home, not an investment property. First, I just want to define what they're saying here when they're saying that for an investment property, it requires 25% down or LTV of 75%. What this LTV stands for is loan to value. So basically how I said my property appraised for $205,000, that is the value of the property. And I'm trying to get a cash out refinance loan. So what amount of loan will they give me for that value? I said 80% is what I got, but this commenter is saying that for investment properties, you can only do 75%, okay? Is this true? Here's a piece of advice I've never shared on YouTube before. When someone in real estate tells you you can't do something, go ask someone else. Have I run into banks that will only do 75% LTV on an investment property? Yeah, I have. Then I called another one and they would only do 60%. And I called another one, they would do 65. And then I called the one that I'm actually using and they'll do 80. Don't let random people on the internet tell you what you can or cannot do. Even myself, I'm just sharing my personal journey with you to let you know what options might be available. You want to call actual people at actual banks and get the answers directly from them. And the reason you can't just depend on me or any random commenter to do this for you is because the bank is going to make a decision on what LTV they will give you, usually based on 3 factors: your real estate experience, the amount of income or savings you have, and how good the deal is itself. And the stronger you are in any one of those 3 categories, generally the more LTV they're going to be able to give you. So if you've got a ton of experience, higher LTV. If you have a ton of income or money in savings, higher LTV. Or if you've just found a home run deal, higher LTV. In my case, I could show them that I had the full $90,000 purchase price coming in for me from private lending. And if you haven't seen this video yet, I'm gonna link it down below because it shows you all of the different financing that I've been using, including how I got that private money loan. So that was one thing that helped me get a higher LTV because the bank didn't have to give me that money. I already had that money coming from somewhere else. The second thing that helped me get a higher LTV is even though I'm not that experienced in terms of, decades in real estate, I'm really only about a year in, but I was able to find a home run deal. And so I had 2 really strong things going for me that helped to make up for my lack of experience. And that's how I was able to get 80% LTV. So let's look at the rest of the comment. They said, additionally, if none of the borrowers have been on title of the property for at least 6 months, then the amount of the cash out refinance must not exceed the sum of the original purchase price and related closing costs. Okay, let's go into this. What they're saying is that I borrowed money to purchase this property. Yes, they're saying that if I haven't owned it for at least 6 months, then the only thing that I can cash out would not be 80% LTV, but instead I would only be able to cash out my purchase price and some of the related closing costs. So I would only be able to cash out 90,000 plus maybe a few grand in closing costs, unless I wait 6 months. This is called a seasoning period. And like I said before, different banks are going to have different requirements on different deals. A seasoning period is basically the bank saying that you can't do a cash out refinance until 6 months have passed since you purchased the property. Now, I've probably talked with about 10 mortgage lenders in my area, and about half of them have seasoning periods and the other half don't. It may be more or less common in your area, but that's what I encountered. The reason that a bank might require a seasoning period goes back to the 3 things that we talked about earlier. If you don't have a ton of experience, they might want to make sure that the deal is truly stabilized and that you did a good rehab and you have good tenants in there before they cash you out and give you such a large sum of money. That might be one thing, but there are no absolutes. It just depends on the bank, your situation, and the specific deal. So then the person finishes up the comment by saying that no cash out refinance would be possible the way that I said this. And they also finish by saying, oh, also I'm a mortgage broker, so I may know what I'm talking about. I'll emphasize this again. When someone tells you you can't do something in real estate, go ask someone else and ask again and ask again and ask again. Let's assume for a moment that this person is a mortgage broker. The guidelines that they've stated here might be standard for their mortgage department. But as I stated in this video, banks often have 2 separate lending departments. There's gonna be the residential side and then there's gonna be the commercial side. Because this person mentioned the standards for primary residences, it sounds like they might be on the residential side of things. And again, in that first video, I told you guys that I use the commercial side of the bank for this refinance. So we're talking about completely different sets of lending rules, even within the same bank, between the commercial and residential departments. And you can probably imagine that if you just call 5 different banks, both the lending and commercial side, you're gonna get 10 different answers from 10 different people. So for this first one, I would say don't depend on comments. Don't even depend on what I'm saying to be the absolute 100% truth. I'm just showing you guys what I'm doing and letting you know what options might be available for you out there, but you gotta dive in and talk to the actual people who are gonna be giving you the actual money. Next comment. Yeah, it's easier to do if you know a millionaire who can give you money whenever you want. So, like I said, I used a $90,000 private money loan to purchase this deal. Then I used $64,000 of my own money that I made wholesaling over the last year to do the renovation. And while the person who gave me the $90,000 loan is a millionaire, first of all, I didn't know him at the start of this journey before I started this YouTube channel, and I definitely can't get money from him whenever I want. I'll share two quick things that hopefully will help you guys. The reason I met this millionaire is because when I first heard about real estate, I dove in head first. People like to use the word obsessed as a negative, but I think that it can actually be a positive, and I became obsessed. I watched YouTube videos, I read books, I listened to podcasts, and because I was doing so much of that, my conversations with my friends and family members and people I was meeting naturally started including different things about real estate. Someone asked me what I'm interested in or what I've been up to lately, and I would tell them. One of those conversations was with a friend, not a millionaire, who knew someone else, also not a millionaire, who knew a kid, not a millionaire, who was trying to get better at basketball, whose dad was a millionaire. So I took that as an opportunity to ask for an introduction, be able to bring value to the son who was trying to play basketball at a high level, and I could give him a little bit of advice and, you know, some feedback on his game, and also let the father know, hey, I'm also interested in real estate. You know, let's chat about it over lunch. We had that one lunch where I actually paid, and he basically just shared the basics of his real estate investing strategy with me. And it wasn't anything mind-blowing. The basics are the basics, but what it was motivating. And he gave me a list of book recommendations. A lot of them I have linked down in the description for you guys. I started listening to podcasts, and every few months I would just email him with an update, letting him know how things were going. When I started the YouTube channel, I would email him a video every few months and just say, hey, I was successful at getting my first house hack, or I was successful at getting my first wholesale deal. And me just checking in with him and showing him that I was actually taking action meant that our relationship was starting to grow, and he could see that I might be a good person to invest in. And when we ended up having a conversation while I was under contract for a couple of deals, he let me know that he might be interested in coming in as a private money lender if the numbers on the deals worked out, which they did. Now, your journey of networking is not gonna look exactly like mine, but there is something you can do, some way that you can bring value to people already with more experience, knowledge, or money than you that's gonna help move you forward in your own investing journey. And here's the second thing I'll say about networking. Last video, I apologize for making so many basketball analogies, but many of you said that you were actually cool with them, so here's another one for you. Have you ever seen a race where there's one person who's constantly like running and looking over their shoulders and trying to see where their competition is? But then there's another person who's dead set focused on the finish line ahead of them, completely ignoring what's going on to the left and to the right. If you're that person constantly looking left and right and comparing what you have to bring to the table versus what other people have to bring to the table, you're wasting energy worrying about others. Just be singularly focused on your goals and how you can bring value and continue to move forward, and don't waste time thinking about what other people have and what you don't. All right, next comment. This is too much. Buy, reno, and get out of there. What if the tenants destroy the property? What if you have to go through the eviction process? So I'm investing for long-term cash flow, not short-term lump sums, meaning that when I buy a distressed property, I buy it, renovate, and rent it, rather than buying it, renovating it, and selling, which is the traditional house flipping model. Long-term cash flow is my goal. It's not the same for everyone, and therefore everyone's gonna have a different strategy. Buying to flip a house is not necessarily a bad strategy if it's in line with the person who's doing its goals. Now, to talk a little bit more about that, why do I want long-term cash flow over lump sum income? First, I'm working very hard right now, but it's with the goal of not working so hard later. So I want to be able to basically invest my time and energy now, and my money now, and get a monthly payoff, you know, in the future that I will be able to live off of. Basically, enough passive income to support my living expenses so that I don't have to actively work. That's my goal. A house flipper's goal might be to, you know, make $100,000 this year to do whatever they want with, right? A lump sum. I'm not gonna make big lump sum money because I'm not just reselling my properties. I'm keeping it and getting monthly income from the rent that's coming in. So different strategies for different reasons. Second, this person mentioned evictions or a tenant destroying a property. Now, I'm actually going through an issue with a tenant right now that I can't talk about just yet because of some legal stuff, but I will be making a video all about it once we get it figured out. So don't forget to turn on notifications because that is gonna be a wild one. But if tenant issues are the type of thing that keeps you awake in a cold sweat at night, then it's probably because the amount of risk you're imagining is higher than your risk tolerance. And real estate is risky, but it's risky everywhere, right? All types of investing are risky. So there's risk associated with tenants when you keep the property for a buy and hold, but there's also risk associated with trying to flip the house. What if the market crashes and you can't find a buyer, or your short-term loan gets called due? There's risk involved with every single real estate investing strategy. They're just different types of risk. And there's also risk in not doing real estate or not investing. There's risk in having a 9-to-5. What if you get fired? What if the company you work for goes out of business? So that's why I don't make decisions based on, is it risky? The answer is yes, right? Everything's risky. I try to think further about that in terms of how much risk is there? What can I do to mitigate that risk? And am I willing to take it on in order to get the return? Ow. That's years of basketball for you. For me, I lower my risk associated with having tenants by trying to follow guidelines that I've learned from more experienced real estate investors and from books and podcasts. So that includes having a tenant screening process, that includes a credit check and a background check. I collect security deposits to help offset any damage that the tenants might leave. I have all of my tenants on state-specific contracts that have been looked over by a lawyer so that it lays out the process of what happens if they don't pay rent. And I have money set aside for every single property that is there just in case something goes wrong with the property or a tenant destroys a property. All of these things lower the amount of risk that I'm exposed to. There is still some risk, but it's lowered, and I've decided that the amount of risk that is there is worth it for me given the amount of return that I'm getting. With this specific deal, the return was adding $40,000 to my net worth and adding $800 to my monthly cash flow. To me, that was worth the risk of having tenants. It's all about finding out what the risks are ahead of time, seeing how you can lower them, and then deciding if the risk is worth the return for you specifically. All right, here's just a random rude one. Very proud of you. Patronizing, but the editing of this video has way too many pop-ups. Less editing, more of you telling it straight. Congratulations. Okay. These videos take a lot of time to make, and not only do I try to make them informative, I also try to make them entertaining, give you guys pictures and graphics and video to help you understand the full process and not just listen to me drone on like your 10th grade economics teacher. So if you do like the things I do to make these videos more not just informative but entertaining, please let me know by changing the color of the like button. The more likes this video gets, the more that will let me know you like my style of videos and don't want me to be more boring. All right, here's another comment that really comes down to what we just talked about, which is risk tolerance. LOL. And if the appraisal doesn't go, and if the appraisal doesn't go in your favor, you are F dash 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 dash. I'm not really sure what all of the dash is for because there's only one letter missing, but we get the point, okay? So remember that for my cash out refinance, the LTV, the loan to value, or the amount that I could get out was 80%. And with that cash out, I paid back my private lender as well as myself for all of the other money that I put in for the holding costs and the renovation. Now, this comment does have some truth to it because I am depending on that cash out refinance to pay off the short-term loans I took. That private money loan was only a 3-month loan, so I need that cash out refinance to pay it back. So again, risk tolerance. And here are 3 ways that I lower my risk tolerance so that I don't have to stay awake at night wondering if the appraisal is going to come back where I want it and be able to pay back my loans. Okay, first, I use my network to help me run the comps and figure out what the ARV or after repair value will be so that I feel more confident in the numbers of my deal. I always run my own numbers. I do not depend on Redfin, what they estimate the property is worth. I don't depend on what Zillow estimates the property is worth, and I don't depend on what Propstream estimates the property is worth. I go through my own process to figure out what are the good comps and what do I think the ARV is going to be. Then I present the deal to my private lender. He's much more experienced experience in real estate than I am, and he's not gonna give me $90,000 of his hard-earned cash if he thinks that I have a bad deal and I've done my numbers incorrectly. So that's 2 eyes on the deal. Then I send the deal to the bank that's gonna be doing the cash out refinance for me to pre-qualify me for that refinance. If they think that's a bad deal, they're not going to give me that loan, and they're gonna let me know why. So now I've got 3 eyes on the deal. And finally, there's a local property manager in my area, and they have a service where they will run comps and give you an estimate of what your property will appraise for, and it only costs $5. So if through all 4 of those steps, everyone comes back and agrees with me on what the appraised value will be and that this is a good deal, then I'm much more confident that the appraisal is gonna come in where I want it if I didn't have other sets of eyes on the deal ahead of time. The second thing I do to lower my risk of my appraisal coming in low is I always rehab to the level of my comps. I actually learned from BRRRR that the #1 mistake people make when they're BRRRRing is that they don't rehab the property nice enough. So imagine, I want my property to appraise for $205,000 because I can see that that's the average of what other renovated properties nearby are selling for. But if those properties have granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, and I go put Formica countertops and white appliances in my property, then I'm not going to get as much value on my appraisal as those comps that are nicer. They're not truly comps now because I can't compare my property to those because I didn't do the same type of renovation as them. So when I'm putting together my rehab plan, I'm picking out the finishes, I have the pictures of my comps up so that I can look at them and make sure that I'm rehabbing to the same level of my comps so that I can get the same type of appraisal. And finally, I don't borrow 100% of the money needed for the deal. This one might sound counterintuitive because one of the questions I get the most is how do you get 100% lending for your deal? But that's where things actually get dangerous. For example, let's imagine that I borrowed all of the money I need for this deal, the purchase price and the renovation, 100% of everything. So I borrow $154,000 from my private lender. Well, if my appraisal comes in at $205,000, I can get $164,000 back. Pay off the $154, still have $10,000 left over. All good. But what if the appraisal doesn't come in at the $205 I wanted? What if it comes in at $185? Well, in this case, 80% of $185 is only $148. I need to pay back $154, and so now I've got to scramble to come up with that money or rework the terms of my loan. Do you think that my private money lender is ever going to give me another loan if I don't pay this one back successfully? Probably not. And what happens if I can't come up with the money or get them to agree to rework the loan? Well, typically, if I can't pay back the loan, they're gonna own the house. This is why borrowing 100% can be dangerous because you're on the hook to pay back 100%. Now, if you have just a home run deal where the appraisal could come in $50,000 low and you'd still be able to pay back all of your loans, then that might be a different scenario. But in this case, it was a really good deal. It was a perfect BRRRR, but I only had about $10,000 of wiggle room if I borrowed everything that I was gonna need. To me, $10,000 of wiggle room would make me lose sleep at night. That's why I didn't borrow 100%. Only borrowed the purchase price, used the money that I make from wholesaling to pay the renovation. That way, I only had to pay back the $90,000 purchase. So even though I'm hoping for an appraisal of $205,000, in order to get that $90,000 cash out, I really only needed an appraisal of $113,000. I had almost $100,000 of wiggle room to be able to pay back my loan. Now, I would have been very, very upset because I wouldn't have been able to pay myself back any of that $65,000 I put into the deal of my own money, but I at least knew that I could pay back my loan even if my appraisal came back drastically low, and any of my own money that I wasn't able to pay myself back, I would just get that in the form of my monthly cash flow over the months and years that I own the property. So at the end of the day, unless you have a super, super home run deal, not putting in 100% can lower your risk of getting a bad appraisal and not being able to pay your loans back. Okay, here's a quick one. What she's not saying is property tax. So if she isn't paying property taxes, the county or state will sell her house outright. So there isn't no way in this country living in a house for free. Okay, I'm not living in this house for free. I'm not living in it. It's a rental property. And when I say mortgage payment, I mean PITI. Principal, interest, that's my loan and the interest associated with it, the $164,000 cash out. But the TI stands for taxes, property taxes, and my homeowner's insurance. So all of that is put in there. You're often gonna hear people say mortgage payment and PITI interchangeably because most times the bank is going to require you to pay the taxes and insurance as part of your monthly payment all wrapped in one, because they don't want to run the risk that you forget to pay those things or you don't pay those things and then you lose the property. So mortgage payment, PITI, property taxes are already in there. I'm not making this channel to trick you guys. So that's already in there. All right, here's another good one. Somebody who mentioned property taxes as well, but something in addition to that. They said cash flow is minus all costs, not just the difference between rent and mortgage, all costs. Property taxes can be significant. It isn't just vacancies and maintenance and repairs. There are also capital costs, emergencies, and surprises. So we already talked about property tax. That's in the mortgage, and that's the PITI. In terms of vacancies, repairs, and surprises, these are very real things that can take money out of your pocket. But I have some unconventional thoughts on this one. When I'm doing the BRRRR strategy, I am renovating the property, and I'm not just doing a light rehab. If you guys have seen my Instagram or my TikTok at Lili Invests, on both of those, you will see that these are big projects. And so I'm replacing a lot of the things that could break and be big ticket items. So the roof, if there's any foundation work needed, we're getting it done. All of the appliances, checking on the HVAC system. If we need a new AC condenser, getting it done. If we need a new furnace, getting it done. Checking on the water heater. All of the big things that could go wrong, the nightmare calls that you might get in the middle of the night, those are gonna be brand new. So that does reduce the likelihood of me needing to have repairs in the near future. In terms of vacancy, these are also freshly renovated properties, and hopefully I've done my tenant screening correctly, so I won't have a tenant wanting to move out in the near future. It could happen, but hopefully not. So while I have lowered my risk of those things happening, I do still set aside $100 or $200 per property every single month as a just in case fund. But I don't take a significant portion of my cash flow to set aside for repairs and vacancy, and here's why. I have to give credit to my guy Ryan Ingram. He has a super dope YouTube channel and he goes live I think every Friday, but I'll link to his channel in the description below, because he was the first one to present this type of unconventional thinking, and Ryan has dozens. I wonder if he's over hundreds by now, but he has a big portfolio and I really do like what he presented. So here's the idea. Let's say I'm saving $200 of cash flow per month for my rental property and the AC condenser goes out. That could be a $2,000 charge right there. I'd need to have saved $200 for a full 10 months to have that in the bank. But what happens if the condenser breaks before 10 months? What if it happens in month 6? I might not have that full $2,000 to take care of it. The point is, saving up just a couple hundreds of dollars a month is almost like a false sense of security unless you've been doing it for many, many months, like over a year, because one big ticket item goes out or breaks, and that sense of security you have from a couple $100s a month really is shown to be false because you don't have the money to pay for what you need to pay for. So the way I look at it is, in my rehab budget projections, that includes a $5,000 property reserve account. So what that means is, right from the beginning, I have $5,000 in case once I'm done with the renovation and I rent out the property, anything goes wrong. I take that money from wholesaling, put it in a bank account, or include it into my rehab budget so that I have that from the beginning. So that way, once I'm done burning the property, not only is everything that could cost $5,000 or so brand new, but I have that in the bank so that even if there are some small repairs or vacancies, I can cover that without losing sleep. I will still set aside $100 to $200 a month per property from my cash flow, but I'm not depending on that to keep my property afloat if something goes wrong, because what's $200 going to do for me if there's a hole in the roof? Now, let's finish up with a lightning round. These are people that I'm going to assume mean well, but just should watch a few more videos on my channel, so go binge me. She's writing away, but she's not telling you the mistakes people can make with the BRRRR strategy because you can find yourself in a hole. Okay. Yes, I'm talking about this specific deal, which was my perfect BRRRR. Everything went right on it. That's why the title says perfect BRRRR. But I make it a habit of consistently showing you guys when I mess up. So I will be linking all of these videos about all of my mistakes in the description below under a section titled mistakes. Next up, how did you start? How did you start? Did someone train you or school? Unfortunately, there's not like an accredited real estate investing degree or college out there. I did have mentors, both free and paid. I read a bunch of books, link in the description for you guys. I listened to a bunch of podcasts, link in the description. And I took action and made a bunch of mistakes. I will link to a few videos down below that I've made as ultimate guides to getting started for different strategies in real estate. And I'll also link to my 5-day beginners bootcamp, which is where you can get my direct help getting started if you want to start wholesaling. 2 questions here that are kind of related. You didn't have an inspection on the property before buying, and how did you find workers for the labor? So when buying a fixer-upper property, you typically don't do an inspection because an inspection is just going to tell you what's wrong with it, and generally there's going to be a lot wrong with it. That's why you're buying it, so that you can fix it. Instead, I typically walk through the property with my contractors to get an idea of how much the renovation is going to cost me so I can come up with a rehab plan and decide if it's actually gonna be a good deal or not. I'm gonna link this video down below to help you find contractors, and I'll also link this video, which is a vlog of what that property inspection day looks like. All in all, there were hundreds of comments on that video. I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed it, and I hope this follow-up video has helped you get some of your questions answered and motivate you to get out there. If you wanna see more of me on a day-to-day basis, be sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. It's at Lili Invests on both of those. And of course, don't forget to change the color of the like button before you go. And until next time, thanks for watching.